All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sticking with us through this tech. We have now our final run of the evening, TASbot playing Final Fantasy 1.
I hear a lot of hype for TASbot. Let's give it up for TASbot. Wow. TASbot loves the love. Thanks to Dwango for letting us borrow TASbot here. He loves crashing Rando events. He's going to be playing Final Fantasy, a game that everyone here loves. And we have a start. To start this, we have a very complex setup here because Final Fantasy actually uses the SRAM, the save game data. It puts the RNG there, and we need to have a known start state. So we've got to clear that. So I cleared that out on these cartridges. And we also are going to be clearing out the RAM on the NES console. And maybe I should explain this. TASbot is connected to the controller wire. This is an original NES, and we have an actual Final Fantasy original cartridge. And we're going to get this started. Are you ready? Okay. So first, I got to do this backwards, so hopefully I... Okay, so this will clear the RAM pattern. Okay, and now I'm going to swap the cartridges. I'm not sure if you're actually supposed to do this on a NES, but this is how we do it. Okay, and if it all works out right, the task will start. Ready? We have TAS. Okay, so this is a 4 White Mages TAS. I am the TAS author, so I've been doing TAS super plays since it was almost a thing, and also been doing Final Fantasy too. So it's really cool to be here in the Final Fantasy community to show this off. There's so much cool stuff with this TAS. We start out with the 4 White Mages, and thanks again to everyone who donated for the names of these characters. You might have noticed that we had a name donation. So the characters' names were actually, put in. I have input generation. So the input for the names, when it actually enters the names in the beginning, that's generated, and it puts that all in there, and so that we get the names in the TAS. You might know that TAS is all pre-generated, so the input is kind of all known ahead of time, and you can think of it like a piano player. It just sort of is going through a script. It knows all the buttons to hit at the right time, and if you hit the button at the right time, you can get a critical hit. Like that, with a White Mage. I don't know, what are the odds of that? Something about 3 in 256. We did buy a few iron hammers because these White Mages. So if you pick the faster run is with fighters, and the fighters, they just skip the weapon shop and go straight to Garland. But the White Mages, we kind of need a weapon. Even TASbot needs a weapon with the White Mages, so they go ahead and pick up some iron hammers, and we did equip those before here. So that was Garland. You probably noticed that one of our White Mages, unfortunately, did not survive the fight. And I think everyone here is quite aware that, when you have fewer members in your party, it can actually be faster. The reason is, number one, you don't have to give as many orders every turn in battle, and that's actually going to be really important in a speed run where we're going to have a ton of random encounters, and every single random encounter we have to tell all of our characters run, 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 run. It actually takes something like 3/4 of a second for each character. So as our characters sort of go away here, it's going to save more and more time. Now, the White Mages that are going through here, you might have noticed we didn't get, well, we get a few spells. We did get a few spells. We didn't fight anything else. We fought Garland, and we got a level up because if you, so with one character dead, you can fight just Garland, and you will get a level up. If you have all your characters survive, you won't get a level up. So that's another advantage of killing off a character, is that the other characters that keep going on get more experience. And that's going to be important because it's better to have one strong character in a lot of cases than it is to have, multiple characters that are sort of middling. But actually, early on, for this particular fight, it's actually nice to have multiple characters around. So it just sort of happens that the fight that's most important to have is early on, and we're going to have 9 pirates. So if we do this right, we have 9 pirates and 3 white mages. So if we do this right, we can do it in 3 turns. You think TASbot can handle that? So about you might know the RNG is pretty simple. It's just 256 numbers. And if you kind of look at the list of numbers, it looks like they're all jumbled up. They sort of took 0 through 255 and jumbled them up. Actually, they're not really, but it just sort of goes along this list. And I can simulate that fairly easily. So I use some optimization scripting that is kind of getting the minimum number of hits. We were actually working it out so that we were attacking the pirates before they went, so that there were fewer hits going on, just less time in that fight. But mainly, we just made sure that we beat those pirates fast. Now we're going to go to the inn. So one reason for going to the inn now, we got another level up, and with that level up, we get more casts of our magic. And so going to the inn is really what we need to do to get our magic back. And we're going to hit the or the magic shop here. The level 2 spell we get is Mute. And we're not going to get a lot of use out of it, but the times that we use it, it's going to be really nice to have. So another nice one, another nice pickup. Now, as far as the plotting for the random encounters, I have another optimization script that I plot out the number of spaces that I'm moving in every area, and I'm kind of figuring out all the fights. The main consideration is, of course, always getting rid of these unrunnable fights. There's certain fights that have this unrunnable flag, and if you get that fight, it's not going to work out very well. There's also a few encounters that are annoying because they have a very high initiative roll for the enemies. So the initiative amount is based on the enemy group. So each enemy group has its certain initiative level. And there are a few groups that have very, very high initiative, and they will almost always be an ambush. And one of those fights is in Marsh Cave here. But we're going to avoid that. We avoided it. You might have noticed that we took a very circuitous roundabout way around Corneria. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of non-encounter squares, and we can actually avoid one step of actual battle kind of steps by going all the way around to get to the bridge. And so by all these tweaks, the other thing we did was we walked in the dock, because the dock squares also don't have encounters. So we did kind of everything we absolutely could, and that kind of tweaked out one fight, which would have been ghosts, or the shadows that have a very high initiative. They would ambush us. It would be pretty annoying. We could survive it, but we'd rather not have to wait for the enemies to attack. We want to run every time. The other thing, you might notice, we're getting fairly small enemy groups. I mean, some of these enemy groups are always pretty big, but we're trying to get smaller enemy groups because every time an enemy loads in, there's a little bit extra lag. So we want to get the enemy groups to be as small as possible. It also helps us to run more easily. You probably noticed we're running every time on the first. We get to go first every time, and we succeed running. So, TASbot can do that. But he needs to plan ahead of time. And it's all plotted out so the higher level flow is to figure out which encounters we're going to do and how we kind of pace ourselves through each area to kind of get fewer fights. And we don't always kind of reduce as many steps as we can and step on non-encounter spaces. Sometimes we actually want to kind of move the encounters in the right spot. Okay, so here we have the third white mage taking a shot so that Liam, our true hero, is able to use the ruse spell. And with that ruse spell, he now has enough odds that even, TASbot needed 2 ruses here because these wizards, they get 2 hits. They have a fairly high chance to hit 2. And so it's just extremely hard to avoid getting hit. But with 2 ruses, we're able to much more easily get in there and get our crit and also miss. We need I think we need 3 crits and a regular hit in there too, because these wizards, well, we're a white mage with an iron hammer, so these wizards are a little tough for us right now. But we pulled it off. Now, TASbot has different ideas on which encounters are going to be a good idea to get as he's kind of going through these random, because, speedrunners are really plotting out which encounters they get. Some of them are very dangerous, especially if you're doing a no resets run or a no RNG manipulation, and you get these encounters if there's an enemy with a stone touch or death touch. That's pretty nasty. But TASbot really only cares if he can run. If we can run, it's all good. Also, even early on, poison enemies. Poison enemies are also bad because if you get poisoned, you have to use a pure potion, and they're expensive early on. It really eats into your grind. But TASbot neither gets poisoned nor needs to grind. So earlier on, you notice we picked up a house, and since we're playing a white mage and we're going to be using some magic, we may need to recover that. So the house is very useful. That's right, and so as Chris noted in chat, you can see the inputs on the controller. The little controller that TASbot is holding there, that is an input display. It is showing the inputs as TASbot is pressing it. Like we said, this is a real NES console with a real cartridge. The simulated stuff is all in TASbot there. So TASbot, he has a Raspberry Pi in his head, and that is kind of running an input. The board that he's holding, that is has some electronics that are the board that he's holding has the TASTM electronics that actually interface with the controller input. And what actually happens here is that when the controller, every frame, so every 60th of a second, the NES asks the controller for input. And there's sort of this electronic handshake that happens, and TASbot has some circuitry that kind of is able to interface with that and provide the input that we have set up in the TAS. So when I created the TAS, it's actually originally done in an emulator. In the emulator I like is FCUX, and it actually turns out it's close enough that when we put the input in a real NES with a real cartridge, it is totally working. And that was Astos. As you notice, he just kept attacking, and he kept missing. And, it's possible there's kind of just enough just enough good spots on the RNG that we're able to get this to work on Astos. Now, we're in a weird state right now. The reason is because Astos gave us so much experience that we actually went up 2 levels, or we would have, because this game only allows you to go 1 level at a time. So we sort of have this extra level banked, and the next time we beat an enemy, even if it only gives us like 1 experience, we'll get a level up. If we were to look at our status right now, it would say like minus 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like big number, because we're kind of we overflowed our experience. But it'll all even out once we get something else. And while we're doing it, we're just going to keep running from enemies. I think we're going to find a good spot, maybe somewhere on the ocean here. There we go. Odd Eye. How much HP does an Odd Eye have? Like 6? So even the White Mage is able to one-shot them, get the experience. The reason why we take a little time to get that level up, because eventually, by beating the bosses, we would kind of even out. But the White Mage really needs those level ups, because that's going to help us to run from battles more easily. Another thing that we're manipulating here, another fun manipulation is our stats. So you probably know that when you go level up, you get some stats. And, you know, the White Mage is guaranteed to get intelligence. And that's great, because intelligence, well, actually it's not great, because intelligence doesn't actually do anything in this game. So, you know, the White Mage is, yeah. But every few level ups, you're guaranteed to get certain stats. There's kind of a big sequence, and every few level ups, you're guaranteed to get certain stats. So the ones that we're most interested in are actually strength and luck. So the reason why we want strength, of course, is because it lets us do more damage with our hammer. And so we're manipulating strength. If we have a level up where we're not guaranteed to get strength, there's still a 25% chance to get it. And we're going to get that a little more than 25% of the time. I don't think we actually get it every time, because once we get a little further into the game, our strength is not so important. But for a little bit here, that strength is going to be pretty important, because there's going to be a point where we need to do a couple long fights where all we can use is our hammer, and we're going to need as much strength as we can get to kind of boost our damage. Yeah, you'll see. Now, another optimization here is the preemptive encounters. So when you see chance to strike first, that actually takes a little bit of time. So we're getting some of them because sometimes it's pretty useful, especially larger enemy groups, or if there's kind of an enemy group that's coming after it that is difficult to manipulate, then we might be getting a preemptive encounter, because when you get that chance to strike first, now you can run on any frame and you'll succeed, which kind of opens up our options to manipulate the next fight. And that same RNG is controlling, it controls everything really, whether you run or not, your turn order in battle, and it also controls how many enemies show up, and whether you get a ambush or first strike. So, revisiting Elf Town here, we got the Harm 2 spell, because, well, there's going to be some undead enemies coming up. I guess undead bosses, even better, and the White Mage is going to have their day to shine. We will not have to, so the next, the next boss, we will not have to worry about how many times our hammer hits. We will be able to break out our harm magic. Almost at the end of this trade-in sequence. We're gonna skip everything else though. We didn't, we skipped like everything. We did not get, there would be a nice weapon upgrade. There's a silver hammer in Elf Castle, but the storehouse is just way too far back there, and we just don't need it. So we kind of left it there. So what's the difference between Kaizoku and pirate? Yeah, so Kaizoku, well, it's kind of spelled wrong, but Kaizoku is Japanese for pirate. But in the Japanese version, the pirates in Provoca are Kaizoku, and the pirates in the random encounters are pirate. Sorry, Hooray Dwarf. We're in a TAS here. So finally, we get to Narek here. And we are not going to grab any of the treasure in his storeroom because we got our house in. We picked up our house in Marsh Cave. This is a no resets run, by the way. So no resets, and that reduces our options for manipulation because one of the so there's a few things you can do. One thing, of course, is save your game in the overworld with a tent, and then you're guaranteed to be able to walk a while without having to get encounters. The next thing you can do is save your game and then fully power off your console and hope that the RAM values all kind of settle back down, and then power it back on, and you will be in a state, a kind of a state that you know for the encounter system, and your next encounter will be kind of reset this cycle. So a lot of people know that if you do this and then you get on the boat and start sailing, your first fight will be with a group of Kaizokus, which is one of the better enemies for grinding for gold. And so TASbot could use that, but it's kind of not reliable because, again, you're counting on the console reaching a certain RAM state. And you saw how much effort we had to do to get the RAM state to match up. We have this actual cartridge that I put in that you saw in the beginning that actually reset the RAM. The main thing, actually, that we're worried about the RAM state is the NPCs. So the randomization for these NPCs, like the bats and the people in town, that's actually way more random than the battle. Like, each of the NPCs, or like, I guess there's a slot for each NPC, and that has, it gets initialized with uninitialized RAM, and so that's why the initial RAM state is important. And it's initialized with uninitialized RAM, and then every time an NPC moves, there's like a counter and an accumulator. The counter keeps counting, and every time they move, there's an accumulator that kind of gets added to. And so we can actually manipulate things by waiting one frame before going downstairs. So sometimes, if you look real close, you might be able to notice when I do that, just to juke the RNG a little bit. And yeah, this floor is the real boss. Yeah, I spent more time optimizing this and getting these stupid bats out of the way than, you know, all of the actual like action here. So I hope everyone appreciates the bats here. There's actually going to be, this isn't the only instance of manipulating the NPCs here. We're going to see some more. Okay, so Vampire. Our harm magic just is going to absolutely rock him. Now, of course, magic can kind of crit too. It doesn't say it, but the damage level kind of has a jump up step. And we're going to get that damage a lot. So this is a prime example of an enemy that TASbot loves to see because Just run away. What TASbot doesn't want to see are the wizard encounters on this floor. Because we've got one white mage, and if we were to try and hammer down that wizard, it would take, 20 turns. And we just don't have time for that. So we've manipulated all our steps so that we won't see that happen. We had some extra movement in a few places, a few spots where we didn't take some no encounter tiles that we could have. And all of that is to set up this sequence where we will not see any wizards here. It's actually not that hard this first time through for some reason, even though we went all the way through and back. If we just sort of get these blocks, there are 2 slots. So out of the 8 slots in the group, there are 2 that have wizards, and they're in the fairly common, not the most common groups, but the 2 of the fairly common groups. And yeah, it's actually pretty tricky to kind of find a good spot there. And remember, we're doing no reset, so we can't just power off the console, power it back on, and do this. So we kind of had to plot everything out from the beginning. And yeah, we have a lot of walking here. I don't know if there's anything that any of our hosts are have to read out, but okay. Do we have any messages from our sponsor, our charity or anything?
All right. Yeah, remember, this is the Final Fantasy Randomizer Summer Marathon 2025, and with your help over the last few days, we have raised over $10,000 for the Liam Foundation. The Liam Foundation's mission is to encourage, assist, heal, and empower our LGBTQIA community through respect, advocacy, and passionate hearts to promote thriving in society. They need a lot of help right now, and everything you guys have done this weekend has been amazing to help them out. So thank you so much. Please remember that we have bonus runs coming up all week, and we can still make that number go up. Thank you.
TASbot loves seeing numbers go up. Good job, TASbot. Yeah. TASbot, he's been having a lot of fun this whole weekend. He got to watch so many cool runs, and everyone's been really great. He loves all the hats. He got to wear some interesting hats, and he made friends with a possum, I guess. I guess when you're in West Virginia, there's he's getting very friendly with the locals here. And he got to roll a seed. I mean, I don't think TASbot's ever gotten to do that before. He's done many things, but now he actually has rolled a seed. So in this area, we actually see one of the fights that we sort of dread, which is the shadows. And the reason why we don't like them is because they have an extremely high initiative. There's a very high chance that they will get a first strike, and then there's a minimum of 7 of them, and it would take forever. They'd probably do some damage. So we have to manipulate it, but there's only something like a 5% chance that they would not be an ambush attack. So we manipulate those away. This is one of the cases where getting a preemptive encounter where we can run at any time really helps, because that can manipulate the shadow fight to be at very low odds. It'll still be a not ambush. Finally, almost ready to get back to Earth Cave here. Okay, so there is our house, because we did use some magic on the vampire. We gotta top it back off. So we're gonna do we're actually going to take a lot of efforts here to avoid these unrunnable wizard fights. There are a bunch of them on, as we were talking, on the 3rd floor, which is the floor where we fought the vampire. And even though we don't have to go in and back, it's still a pretty long walk through there with all the bats. And this floor does not have any unrunnable fights, so we can spend some time on here. We're actually going to take some extra steps, and since we needed to add some extra steps, I'm going to take a little sightseeing route through this floor. You would normally, I don't think there would normally be any reason to go that way, so. Oh. That's right, yeah. TASbot, you can see his connection real well here. He's connected straight into the controller port there, and his electronics interface right there, and you can see the input on the controller, and that's TASbot playing the game. So the names, there was a certain order for the names, and you notice that we didn't put them in the order that we kind of planned out the order that they would end up in from the beginning. So that's the order for the names. Yeah, this was pretty good. Is there a story behind the names here?
People do not like white mages.
4 white mages. It'll never work. Unless you're TASbot.
So, question for you.
Okay.
How long does it take to put together a task like this?
Quite a while. I've went through a few iterations on these tasks. At first, I was always going for the fastest route I can with the fighters. But when I started, I think I originally did this. I submitted it on April 1st because there's an April Fool's thing for task videos, and I submitted this on there. And then I think when I met Dwango and I saw TASbot, and at first they thought that we wouldn't be able to, have TASbot play this game because uninitialized RAM. But they found, they were able to solve that problem and the RAM memory and the SRAM seed, issue. And so I started thinking, okay, the only thing I need to work around are the resets. So I can just reroute the task to be no resets tasks, and voila, TASbot can play this game with white mages. You notice we did spend some time to walk around a little bit between floors 3 and 4 to get rid of some encounters on our list. There are actually unrunnable wizard encounters on this floor as well, but they're on different slots than on floor 3. And so by going between floor 3 and 4, we can avoid all of those unrunnable encounters. Okay, so this is going to be the easiest fiend. Well, I guess the easiest fiend for a white mage that doesn't have, something that we'll get later. But because Lich is undead, and we have harm magic, and even though we're only 1 white mage, we're gonna do pretty well here. We're going to take an Ice 2, because getting that, once we get past Ice 2, his next spells on the spell list are easy to manipulate to be just, they're all status effects. Well, there's Slep, which we just made sure he didn't miss, and then Fast, which would be annoying if he actually attacked, but he's dead. So there's our first fiend and our first orb. And now it'll get a little more interesting because we get to take the ship. So once we get the canoe, our routing options will open up a little bit. And we'll have to see what we do with that. Just a little bit. So the encounter rate on the overworld is actually higher than in dungeons. The encounter rate on the ship is, of course, very low, but the ship's moving faster, so you're going to see some enemies. One of the other things that we're looking at is the flow of the RNG, and when we get to a boss where we want to be at a certain point on the RNG to get a good pattern on the fight, whether that means that we attack and get a crit and they miss, because that'll only happen if it only happens on like one point in the RNG. Then we want to make sure that we're not kind of like right at the wrong spot where we've got to wait all the way. Okay, so think about it this way. There are 256 numbers on the RNG, and when we're waiting in battle, the RNG actually, it increments, but only one. So the RNG increments by 1 every second frame. So that's 512 frames, which would be what, 8 seconds. So that would be quite a while to wait. So we're actually, it's kind of a secondary manipulation thing, is trying to make sure if we have to manipulate something that is kind of like very rare, we're going to make sure that we don't have to just sit there on our battle menu for 6 seconds, 8 seconds. Now, I'm sure that if we did have the confused old man, TASbot would still, maybe actually, you know what, TASbot it would probably be even faster for TASbot because, you know, just coincidentally, I think the right old man would probably somehow walk pretty far out. That's right, slow as a spell, but I'm not sure if I can recommend it. The vanilla game has so many bugs, but it's still so awesome. Some of those bugs are on white magic, some of them are on black magic. More the effects, actually some of them are on items and the critical hit rate. That's right. I remember that Nintendo Power thinking, oh, I've got to use the dragon sword against the dragons. Yeah. So with the canoe, of course, they told us right away we get the canoe, go fight the fire fiend. So we'll do that later. For now, we're gonna go straight to Ice Cave because we get the floater in the airship, and we want to go fast, and the airship goes pretty fast. So that sounds like a good plan. So this is another spot where we have unrunnable wizards, but if you get the unrunnable wizards here, you've got at least 6 of them, and that's not going to work for us. So we got to make sure that we get rid of them. We also have large mobs of undead enemies, like all over. We have mages, we have sorcerers. You know, TASbot doesn't care so much because he's going to run. So sorcerers, they've got death touch, but there are some other nice things in Ice Cave here. As we walk down here. Do not question. No, TASbot loves questions. If anyone in chat or anyone here has any questions about TASbot, feel free to ask. I guess it's faster. So a lot of these things are. So you might notice we're not taking as many kind of no encounter steps. So basically, you'll get fewer encounters if you walk more on the damage squares. And there's some other spaces too where we kind of didn't walk the most optimal way to reduce the number of encounters. And the reason is because we need to make sure that we don't hit these wizards on this floor. Oh, we're gonna pick up a heal potion. It'll be important, trust me. And again, not the most optimal route to be avoiding battles, but remember we need to kind of ramp up our encounters numbers and kind of burn off the encounters that would have been those unrunnable ones, and they'll be on a different floor. Then we will be able to walk through that first floor without the unrunnable encounters. So right before the eye, you notice we bought a silver hammer back in Crescent Lake, and buying it there was faster than picking it up in the back of the of Elf Castle. And so yeah, with that we can hammer down the eye. Just make sure Eye doesn't get any of his status ones off on it, because that would be bad. Oh, it was there. That's where the floater was. Yeah, and we have a trap tile with, tons of ghosts. Now, we're gonna need some gold pretty soon. So we're gonna get that here. Luckily, there's a whole bunch of gold in some of these chests here. You saw we picked some up earlier. This room is just loaded. So we'll shore up our gold count here, and that'll get us all ready once we get the airship. A few more steps. So see this. Anytime you see me get in an encounter right before going upstairs, it's probably because that fight would have been an unrunnable fight if we had gotten it after going the stairs. Is this even right? So now that we've got that, so when we get back on the ship, this is gonna be, we're gonna be, leaving the ship and getting on the airship, and this will be our last chance to go, to kind of use the ship to groom our RNG for later on. The reason why the ship is good, because it moves twice as fast as our walking pace, and it doesn't, TASbot learns how to do. We'll have to see if I can get TASbot to play a Rando. Then I can finally get a win over Chris. So later on we're gonna have even more fights, even more areas, and we're actually gonna prepare for that by grooming our encounter system, or all the numbers in our encounters. So there's this there's a set of numbers that it goes through, 1 through 256, and it goes up and down and up and down, and then it switches and goes up, something like that. Yeah, it's pretty complicated. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. The other one that... There we go.
Hey, Luke,
Did we
you
find
missing
it?
your dock?
That's one of the fun things about a task is, you know, if a speedrunner has to do something, they kind of go back and forth to do something real simple. But if you're gonna task, you gotta show off, you know? And it's, yeah, that's one reason why I love tasking. It's, you get to do fun stuff like that. So there is our money. We took all the cash we saved up from Ice Cave there. And of course, you know, coming up, we're going to be going to the Sea Shrine. And you know that area is just really nasty on encounters, so we've got it all ready there. Now we can kind of the point that when we use the when we open up our inventory, it kind of drops a frame from the counter that controls the NPCs, so we can kind of use the timing of when we go to the pause menu and use the bottle as sort of like a manipulation for the NPCs. So that will help us make something happen later. That's the thing about tasks. You kind of gotta plan it all the way through, and you know you see like, I wonder if I could get this to happen. There's only a less than 1% chance, but you know. Yeah, and then you find a way to make it happen, and then you think, well, is there a way I can make it happen more easily? Oh, and wait a minute, I have to make this 1% thing happen, and then this other 1% thing. So yeah, it just keeps going from there.
So when you do this, do you start out with like, hey, here's a completed run, and then try to optimize it, or do you optimize as you go? Like how?
A little bit of both. Yeah, a little bit of both. I do, when I first start tasking a game, I'll try and play all the way through, and kind of start looking at the route there. Because once I've got a task that goes all the way through, now I can kind of use that initial task and take a save state from a certain point and kind of do it. And I can maybe simulate certain things by hacking my save state to do things like that. That's one thing so the other games I've tasked include Dragon Warrior 2. I've shown that at RPG Limit Break. I have done Super High Glide because well, the speedrunner asked me, no one's ever tried tasking this game. Okay.
Well, we had Dragon Warrior 2 randomizer on here, not Super Highlight.
Oh. Oh no. Yes, please don't randomize that one. Okay, so chest pickup, that was the Mage Staff. The Mage Staff is going to be pretty useful. This is the first item that we're able to reach that we can use in battle that will give us a very powerful attack spell. So now our white mage is playing with fire. He can use the Mage Staff. Unfortunately, the next boss is, the next boss is resistant to fire, so it's not going to work so well. But there are a lot of enemies that are weak to fire that we may have to kill, so that Mage Staff will come in handy. But the slab's the only thing that we need on this floor. Sorry, mermaids. I guess you can just turn into bubbles. we've got a while through the sea shrine here, and so you notice we went up to get the slab first, and now we're gonna go down and fight Lich or Kraken. which one is it again? So yeah, we're gonna fight Kraken, and if we don't have a good way to take out Kraken, it would be kind of nice. But the thing is, it's just too far away to kind of come back here later. Even if we didn't have any other, even if we came right back here with a more powerful attack method, it would just take too long to go all the way to Onrak, go all the way through the town, get into the sea shrine, go all the way back down. So we're gonna take out Kraken here before we leave. So the unrunnable counters in the Sea Shrine include ghosts, very powerful undead enemies. They also include this really nasty fight with wizard sahags, and that's just packed with sahags and wizard sahags. And yeah, we don't want to fight them, so we're gonna make sure that we don't see those encounters. That was what we were doing when we did that extra sailing on the ship. We really groomed the RNG. We kind of get on the right place in there. We get on the right place in that list of numbers that sort of move things. We also get to the right place on the encounter list. So another aspect of the encounters is that there's a list of groups. Every area has 8 different enemy groups. The last 2 on the list are very rare, but the first 6 are, and it kind of like sort of goes through the list as far as which ones are more common and less common. But all of those enemies in the enemy list, there's kind of like a list in the memory that has all of these enemies. So it's like 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, so on. And every time we get into a fight, it's going to be one of those groups, and we sort of increment to the next item on the list. So that's kind of our basic strategy for avoiding these unrunnable encounters, is to move to the right spot in that list. Okay, so Kraken. Kraken has 800 HP. And all we could really do is wail on him with our hammer. Now, he's going to ink us, and this is one of the glitched spells. It doesn't actually do anything. So we're totally fine with him, getting dark on us. In fact, once we're turned dark and he uses it again, we get this ineffective thing, and it's kind of the animation is a lot faster. So we want to get turned dark, and then we hit him back for 32 damage. Okay, so he's got 800 HP, and we're doing 32 damage a hit. So that's 25 turns. It's a good time for a song. I don't know, does anyone have a song for 25 turns of Kraken? 25 hits with my silver hammer, 25 hits to go.
This reminds me of a certain chaos hit from an Oslotto. Yes, Saracen.
So there's 256 numbers in the RNG list, and it turns out that so as we said, we can manipulate it by just weighting our cursor before we command our guy. Every other frame it increments, but it also increments. So every time we kind of get a hit, that increments it. when you get multiple hits, that has to run, because it has to do one roll to see whether you hit or not, and then it does another roll to see if you get a how much damage you get. So there's a roll for hit, and there's a roll for damage. The hit roll also controls whether you get a crit. If it's a low enough, if it's a low roll on the hit, you get a crit. It also uses the RNG. So the little dust animation, every time you hit one of the enemies, that dust animation is using the RNG. Like every frame, it's like really hammering the RNG there. It also uses the RNG, like the wobbling hit on when you get hit, the flashing animation on your white mage. That's using the RNG. And so it turns out between all of those, so that kind of dust animation, it's actually longer when you're attacking a fiend than when you're attacking a normal enemy. And so when you're attacking a fiend and then also getting hit there, then you get it almost goes all the way through the entire RNG. So we're actually getting the exact same RNG every time, but we don't have to wait. So you can see we're waiting a little bit on the fight there, but we, yeah. So later on, we'll have much faster ways to take out the bosses. That's going to be like the only slow boss. You know, we did get the mage staff, but like we said, it's weak. It's strong against fire, and the mage staff. When you use the mage staff, the animation on hitting is actually longer than your attack, and so it turns out to just be faster each turn to use our little silver hammer here. I believe that's the last fight we're actually going to use the silver hammer. But now we're in the waterfall. This was another spot that I spent a lot of time optimizing, and you will see why in just a little bit here. I mean, not these fights. The fights here are all pretty easy, and they're all easy to run from. TASbot silver hammer. You know, one of the things that I'd like to see more in this game is more axes, because the axes are just not the best weapons. And, you know, as the Axeman, that sort of saddens me. So that's one of the runs I think about making sometimes, is the axe run, where, you know, you can only use axes. Anyway, we're going through Excalibur. Maybe that one could be Okay, so we'll see in just a little bit here. Just a little bit, once we get past all these encounters. Okay, so the robot just happens to be walking right by the door as we go through. That's actually important because, of course, right inside the door is a trap tile, and we would have had to run from... It's a runnable fight, but still, we want to avoid it. So yeah, robot manipulation hype. TASbot was able to manipulate his robot buddy here. So many random fights. So in my notes on the if you watch the the task videos run, I have a whole bunch of notes about like the history of Final Fantasy on here, and so I studied all the stuff like how they kind of got the artists and came together, and I love how Final Fantasy, the reason everyone knows why it's called the final, right? It was gonna be his final project. But yeah, that's what happens when you succeed. You have to keep doing more. We kind of mess around a little bit here to get Dr. Un. I wish I could have gotten him to go a little bit further, but Dr. Un, he just doesn't want to cooperate. Man. I've actually been working on learning Japanese, so I really wish I could find a slab that I could just learn it instantly. That'd be pretty nice. I did get far enough that I actually played through this game in Japanese. It was pretty neat to kind of get all the original lore. It's kind of neat how like all of the names that they switched to later for the different items and things were there in Japanese from the beginning. Okay, so here we have an unrunnable fight with a Zombull. But we've got he's weak against fire, and we've got a Mage Staff. I mean, he's also undead. We could use Harm, but the Mage Staff is actually stronger, so... So those Zombull fights are pretty common, so we're gonna just make sure that, we're gonna have to take care of them, but they're not really that bad, so we'll go ahead and...
You mean TASbot didn't find the nuke stick in Elfland?
Oh! That's where it was? Oh, man. It would have helped. Blue? Pa? Alright, so we all the way to Leaf in here. Oh shoot! Sorry, TASbot. What do you think about weapons that you use them and cast spells? Because they're pretty useful. Now, do you remember when we picked up the one heal potion a while back? We actually used it, and if we hadn't, we would be dead now. So that's why we picked up that heal potion. But yeah, 2 Zombulls, not too bad for getting through this area. And by kind of using those 2 Zombulls, by taking those 2 fights, we kind of get a really good setup later on. So that's one of the things we kind of have to work through is which ones can we deal with which encounters can we deal with here that are going through. That's right. It's all very precise. TASbot, he's not just precise, he is perfect. He is a perfectionist. All of his button presses are perfectly timed when they're supposed to be. So yeah, we're going through this dungeon with 1 white mage with 15 HP. Not stressful at all. Say hi to TASbot's little robot friend here. not sure. Yeah, that might have just been. I'm not sure. Yeah, what we're there. No, the blue dragon is a trap tile here. So this one we can't. And there we use our mute spell. We picked up that mute spell back in Provoca, and now the blue dragon has been pretty well neutered. It might have been, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, okay, so just because it works for TASbot doesn't mean it'll work for you. We've got that. So here we get to the fun part, because we picked up the Bane sword, and it turns out that any sort of status effect, like Bane or like Mute, can be manipulated to hit through the supposed invulnerability. So each enemy has a set of flags that say whether they're invulnerable to a set of status effects. And there's a bit for different. I guess you can kind of define the bits as like different elements or something, but there's basically a bit that controls Bane and a bit for like darkness or something. I forget what all the elements end up being. Oh, we're gonna take this fight because we need some extra experience. We're gonna need a certain number of casts of a certain number of magic cast, so we need to be on just a little bit of a higher level, just for a little trick that we're going to do later. Anyway, yeah, so 3 out of 256 are the odds that you kind of break through the invulnerability. The reason why this works is when you do a status effect, it does this roll, and it actually wants to roll. For some reason, they made the math out of. They want to compare it out to 200. What the hell? That's what you're complaining about first, right? Wait, which way are you supposed to go? Left up? Oh. Oh. This is one of TASbot's favorite areas, but we're not going to be able to meet his friend Warmech, unfortunately. He's a very rare encounter. Oh yeah. So here's the Bane. Yeah. So it's actually pretty easy to get on Tiamat here. It's like a 1 in 7 chance. That's nothing for TASbot. TASbot doesn't blink for anything less than 1 in 100. But actually, so it wants to change the odds to something out of 200, and so it takes the number that you get, which is a number between 0 and 255, and it does some math to round that down to 200. And when it does that rounding, it does like a multiplication and then a truncation. And so it takes if it gets a 1 there, that 1 becomes a 0 out of 200. Okay. So in the list of RNG numbers, there's actually 2 zeros and there's 1 1. And all of those become a 0 when it converts it into this 1 out of 200 number. And there's actually a comparison there. There's a threshold that it compares it to. And so every enemy has this like magic evade or magic resistance stat, and it kind of computes this threshold for whether it can resist Bane or a status effect. And when it's comparing it with this number, it rolls so it rolls that number from 0 to 200, and then it compares it to the threshold. And if it's under that, if it's less than or equal to that number, then it works. it's important that it's less than or equal to, because if we roll a 0, now it works every time. And if the enemy has an immunity to Bane, for example, then it automatically sets that threshold to 0. And so the reason why it works is that you can roll a 0, and now even if the enemy's immune, it'll work. And so basically, no enemy is immune to our white mage with the Bane sword. So once again, we're not taking like all of the fire tiles here, simply because we want to get rid of an encounter just before we hit these stairs. Or just after, something like that. I think it might be manipulating it for Temple of Fiends. Because there is an unrunnable encounter on this floor. Alright, we will disrespect Carrie here and just... Bane. Of course, Carrie is immune to it, but who cares? TASbot does it anyway. Alright, here we go. We go back. Does TASbot have the world record? I mean, he has the world record for a TASbot. I have the fastest TAS. So the fastest TAS is, I guess if you consider sort of the very synthetic playing the TAS back on an emulator, there's some tricks where you can reset the game, and you can, so on an emulator playing back, you can instantly power on and off the console and get back to a known state. And that kind of makes it, it's not fair, because being able to do that instantly, of course, isn't really doable on console. But that's right, yeah, Giraffe. Even if you're immunity, you can succeed 3 out of 256. And why did we buy Fear? Very good. That's a pretty good question. With less heal pots. Yep. Okay, final dungeon. We have a level 13 or 14 white mage, and no heal potions. That's right, yeah. Okay, so here's the eye, or the Phantom. This is yeah. So, of course, Phantom is immune, but again, we don't really mind. This is where if you forgot to take the loot, it's gonna be a little too bad. Now there are a lot of unrunnable encounters on these few floors, but luckily we're able to miss them so far. A lot of my runs, I think the fighters end up having to meet up with zombie dragons. Okay, and this fight is unrunnable, so Pain Sword. Now, because the animation takes a different amount of time so normal enemies and fiends have a different length of animation for that sort of dust when the Bane Sword goes, the actual the RNG that you kind of like hit the A button on is different for activating those. And for a normal enemy, you actually have, if you want to go first and get the Bane to go off, there's actually a 2 out of 350 or 2 out of 256 chance. For the Fiends, it's only 1 out of 256. And that's important because if Lich goes first, he will kill us. You know, he'll probably cast Nuke, but if he attacks, like, we can't dodge it. Because all of the Fiends have, like, you know, I think Lich has, what, 4 hits? But, yeah, so at this, we have to, it's only a 1 out of 256 chance to go first and get the Bane to work. So we're going to have to make that happen. Now, every time we run from battle, when we load up a battle, it uses the RNG to figure out how many enemies are going to show up. So every encounter group has sort of a ranking on like how many enemies of each type can show up, and it kind of does a roll there. It does some other rolls for the encounters, and then when you start the turn, it actually takes the order. And the order of your turn, does everyone notice how the order is determined? So it takes a list of all the enemies. The enemies start out first, so all the 9 slots of the enemies. And then it took your characters after that. And then it goes 14 times, and it picks one item, one of the entries out of the, 13 entries, the 9 enemies and 4 heroes. It picks one of them, and it picks another one, and it swaps them. And it does that, I think, 14 times. And that's how and then that's your turn order. So since when it first starts out that sequence, the enemies are first. So you can only get first by having your character swapped above them. If you don't get your character picked, the enemies are going to go first. So the enemies actually have a higher probability of going before you. So going first every time is actually pretty hard to manipulate. The other interesting algorithm is when the enemies decide how they decide to target. Based on your characters, it actually looks at, so it's a 50% chance to get the first character, 25 for the next character, and then 12.5%, so 1/8 for the next 2. But because the RNG isn't precisely even, it's not exactly 0. So if the RNG had taken 0 through 255 and hit every number, it would be even, but it's not. So you actually have a slightly higher chance for your fourth party member to get hit. Your fourth party member actually has a slightly higher chance to get hit than the third one. One of these random RNG things. All right. Final boss. And, you know, the Bane Sword, it's been working out pretty well, but it's kind of anticlimactic. So we're going to do something else on the final boss here, but it's going to involve status effects. We're going to start out with Mute, because Chaos, you know, he mostly uses spells, and so once we mute him, we just need to make sure he doesn't attack, and it's all good. So we're going to use this Fear spell that we bought, and we have 4 casts because we get some extra levels here. And so after we cast Fear 4 times, because it stacks, he's going to constantly become more and more terrified. Until finally, you're already on time. That's how TASbot rolls. Yep. Chaos did run away, yes. If you missed it. Chaos ran away. And, it counts as a win, so...
All right, thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
Anything last things to say about TASbot? Where to find
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
where to find everything going on?
I mean,
how to see more of this.
Yeah, it's Father's Day. I got a special shout out for my dad. He's probably not watching, but I wanted to say that I remember playing, he's not a gamer, but I remember playing this game with him when I was growing up, and he actually stuck through it and played all the way through. And that's one of the things you remember about your dad. And but the party that he picked, was 3 thieves and a red mage. And so we had, it was a bit of an ordeal, but he stuck through it and he finished. So, so that's my memory about my dad for Father's Day. So, so big thanks to all the dads around. And thanks to Dwango for letting us do, and everyone who kind of made TASbot possible. I'm not the one who made the hardware. I kind of created the tasks in the emulator, but all of the TASbot's 3D printed body, his eyes, all of the replay devices, and the special mechanisms that we have to so Final Fantasy doesn't have a way to clear your save, right? So we had to have a special way to clear the cartridge, to clear the RAM. This was all stuff that kind of hardware hackers in the TASbot orbit have figured out. So big thanks to them. And especially thanks to Dwango for putting this all together. And that's TASbot.
Awesome. Well, you're going to see some behind-the-scenes magic here as we transition over to our finale here in just a moment. We've got a few words to talk about, and we'll get going in just a moment.